Hey y'all, welcome back to Babeinlibrary. It's your girl Lisa, and if you've seen the thumbnail of this video, you already know it is time to talk about one of my most anticipated releases, which is Daniel Black's Isaac Song. Alright, so the reason why I am showing you the thumbnail is because I actually have my final book of the month box here. This book is the final book that I have selected because it is time to end my relationship with Book of the Month. Now, I've had them since mid 2021, and don't get me wrong, they've had plenty of bangers. Some of my favorite reads that have been on my, best of in the last few years have come from this book box subscription. However, they don't knock it out of the park every single time. And if I wanted to, a lot of their books get sold again on Pango or on half price books, or they get sold at the bookstore. Whatever the case may be, I didn't feel like I needed to do a subscription anymore. However, it is only right that one of my favorite books, which is Daniel Black's Don't Cry For Me, which was the first companion of this book broke me, y'all. This book right here had me sobbing in tears. And so I thought when we finished this, that was it. Daniel wasn't going to write anything else. And I was okay. The way that he wrapped up Jacob's story gave me enough to where I didn't feel like I needed to go read Isaac's story. And that's truly because I did not know that it was going to exist. But Daniel has been so gracious enough to bless us again with Isaac's story, and I absolutely had to read it. So while this is in the book of the month package, I actually received an ARC copy from NetGalley, and so I have finished it as of today. I had to wash my face, come back, take a little bit of a break to compose myself, because just like Don't Cry For Me made me cry, Isaac's Song had me snotty nose crying. There was a point at 75% where it matched and mirrored Don't Cry For Me, and I just had to relive and experience that piece of their mutual story again. And so I want to take a moment to open up my Book of the Month package before jumping into this. And I think it's important because I am going to see Daniel Black on, I believe, Tuesday. Today is Sunday. I'm going to see him on Tuesday, because the day in which this release is Tuesday, and he is coming to St. Louis, and we are so blessed to be able to experience him on his release day as he's talking about this book. So I am beyond excited to to have read this book and get to see him and listen to him talk about it on his release day. I think that's going to be one of my highlights of 2025 because, like I said, I finished it this morning. While it is not a exact 5-star, I think once I finished that part at the 75 to 80% mark, once I finished 80%, I was like, I honestly don't need the remaining 20%. I feel like I received closure and it was a wrap up. However, I did understand the nature of what Daniel wanted to capture. He wanted to make it a full, rounded, nice tie up with a bow. I didn't necessarily need that. I felt like I received my conclusion at 75%. Like I said, 80%. I'll say that. But this is definitely a 4.75, which I will round up to a 5-star because the writing, remarkable. I think I wind up highlighting 70-something passages in this book. And I'm going to film a clip of me going in and transferring my digital highlights to my book highlights, so you'll be able to see that. thing I can say about Daniel is that his writing is exquisite. It is touching of your soul. It is immersive. It is raw. It mirrors a lot of your classic writers, right? He has really taken a moment to storytell, to provide you insight, to do it with depth and responsibility. I know a lot of people say, oh, both of these books, Don't Cry for Me and Isaac's Songs, a lot of them say this just seems reflective of his life story, which may or may not be, right? However, the way in which he crafts the stories and how he makes them relatable to you and your experience. I am not a black man. I am a cis hetero black woman, right? My journey and my story is nothing like Daniel's story. However, the experience of Isaac in this story, I can resonate with. It talks about Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, has a little bit of just a teensy taste of something related to St. Louis and Chicago, right? Like, this is a Midwest story. I live in St. Louis. I can resonate. He brings up, a discussion about the Kansas City Star, which is a newspaper. He talks about eating Gates Barbecue. He talks about Lincoln University, which is an HBCU in Missouri, right? So, like, those pieces of the story grasped me, and it made me feel like, okay, I connect with you. There was a discussion about Jacob's childhood, and for Christmas, Jacob, which is the father, right? Isaac is the son. Jacob would get for Christmas a sack of candy that had oranges and, I'm going to say, peanuts and walnuts. I'm not going to call it what he called it, not on the channel, but it had candy canes. Like, that was Christmas for him, right? It wasn't, brand new bicycles. It wasn't Game Boys. It wasn't that. And while I was blessed and fortunate enough to have those things, at my church, we received that same sack, right? Like, and to me, it never even dawned on me that what they provided to me at the church as a young person for a Christmas gift was symbolic, or it resonated with the Black experience. Like, I did not realize that someone else had that experience until I read this book. And it just blew my mind to say, wow, even though you are not living this person's story, there are things that connect you together. I loved reading about that. I resonated with Isaac, right? As we talk about, there becomes a time where you believe that you having higher education absolves you, or it gets you away from having certain experiences that you don't think that you would come across, right? I am an educated Black person. There is no way that my white counterpart or my white peers will not respect me, that they're going to think of me less than, that they're going to ask me to dance and sing for them at a holiday party, right? In reality, your education does not spare you from anything, baby. That you have built that up into your mind, and you have put yourself on this pedestal. But when someone looks at you, they may just see your Black body. In this, it talks about the layers of nuances that Black people can have, right? In this, Isaac is a Black gay man who has effeminate ways, right? So truly, when he comes to realize that his father was saying that sometimes I am raising you to be a Black man. That's truly Jacob's entire priority in raising Isaac. He said, hey, I love you. I'm going to try my best to get myself to be where I need to be as your father to accept you wholly. But at the end of the day, I have to instill discipline in you. I have to instill strength in you. I have to do so many things, because regardless of whether or not you are effeminate, the world is going to see you as a Black man first. Certain things and certain qualities about yourself, they don't even register. For me, I'm a Black woman. And if you ask me about my identity, someone is going to recognize me as being Black well before they recognize me as being a woman. I know both of those things makes up my identity. However, there is a priority and an order in which you identify. And this book calls it out. Like, when I tell you the amount of highlights and the amount of things that, like, really resonated. And I've written 4 pages of notes, and that was just kind of me being generous. This talks about how children, it's not until you're older or you have children of your own, or that you take the time to like really deconstruct what you believe is your childhood, separating the facts from your feelings. It talks about how oftentimes when you come up and you're raised by 2 adults, you ultimately see one person as being better than the other because maybe one of them disciplined you, one of them provided you spankings, one of them was a little bit harder, one of the people, again in this situation his father, was more strict, and that automatically makes you put that person as the enemy, which means somebody has to be the good guy. And that's just how you wired your brain to believe. And so it talks about this. This is one of those books that I love because this character goes to therapy, which is very, very unique for every single person. But to see a Black man in therapy and then him walk through it in his own way and own fashion and relive those experiences that we get to be a part of. Y'all, I can't speak enough praises about this book. I could go on for days and days and days, but I do want everyone to experience it themselves because, again, I know this is a new release. Please do yourself a favor before jumping into Isaac's song. Read Don't Cry for Me. Again, I think that there is a lot about reading this book first that you will get to really see, that you won't necessarily completely villainize Jacob, and that you will read Isaac's song with a fresh and open perspective. These two absolutely go together. They have to be read in a certain order, in my opinion. But I will tell you that you get a lot more in Isaac's song about, again, Isaac's journey, right? Because these two are independent of one another. These are 2 independent characters, but their stories are weaved together, and it's the true, the father and the son. This is a generational discussion, right? We talk about in Isaac's song how Jacob writes a letter to him. And in that letter, it says, hey, I have given you a garden, and in there I have sowed some seeds into you as a person. Your job is to root out the weeds, right? And to allow your crop to flourish and grow as it was intended. I planted those seeds because those seeds were planted in me, but you have to do the work of removing those weeds. Again, highly, highly talk about therapy in this book. So read these 2. I don't want to give you too much, but just know that Daniel Black has created a universal story that has a lot of uniqueness for each particular reader that goes into this. But the stories are something that you can resonate in one way or another. I love that, again, they're both historical fiction. So in this, you get small glimpses of experience and centered in the 80s, right? So 80s and 90s, we talk about the Rodney King incident. We talk about the AIDS epidemic and how it related to a Black man that was a homosexual, right? We talk about the highs and lows of, what does it mean to go to an HBCU versus a PWI? How does that shape your view and your lens? There is discussions, lots of trigger warnings in this one. There is a discussion about what it's like to grow up in the South and then how that frames your mind and versus growing up in the Midwest. Daniel Black really did crush it with this book. So again, pick up both of these. Both of them are carried by Book of the Month. If I'm not sponsored by them, obviously I am ending my subscription. But like I said, one thing that they did get right is picking up Daniel Black's work. Also, you're going to get to see that I get to meet, like I said, Daniel on Tuesday. So you're going to see me experience it, listen to him talk about his book, market and sell it. And that we're going to go ahead and roll into now.
Father's trying to get his attention spiritually throughout this book, right? And so the worst thing I think in the world is for people, especially black people, to ever get to a point where the only thing we trust is what we see.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
Not at all. It's actually because black people have a sacred way we do ritual.
That's right.
And the ritual, if it's not right, the spirit doesn't come. Because the ritual is really our way of saying, Spirit, we invite you here, right? And we have prepared the ground, if you will, right, for this to occur. Historically, I don't care how starving you are, you must bless this food before we eat. I mean, that's a given. That's what we do. Even if you don't believe in God, if you sit with black people, you just sit and wait. Because this is part of how we do the ritual. Right? And I'm saying this because if we're not careful, we'll pass this off, right, as unimportant as silly folklore. Instead of really understanding the ways in which black people in America are really consciously and subconsciously fighting to maintain traditions that kept us human.
That's right.
Right? We're the only people I know who could come out of slavery and teach our children to say yes ma'am and no ma'am to the same people who had us in bondage. See, black people believed in character even while we were being molested.
That's right.
And that's really the thing that has really kept and sustained us. And Isaac discovers this, right?